Howdy, peeps. Today, we're going to talk about meal prep. Join the Journey Radio starts right now.
Welcome to the infusion of positive energy into the lives of single Latter-day Saints everywhere. This is Joy in the Journey Radio.
And welcome back, peeps, to another wonderful, splendiferous, joyous episode of Joy in the Journey Radio. I am Lance, your host for Joy in the Journey Radio, and this is episode number 377, Meal Prep Tips I Learned. So if you're joining us for the live program, feel free to, join the chat. Tell us where you're from. Hop that information on in there. If you're watching this program after the broadcast, then just go ahead and, leave a comment down below. Let us know where you're from. This will help us with the algorithms for the program. And so, yeah, let's get into this. If you want to thrive during your single years, and that's one of the purposes for Join the Journey Radio, is to help Latter-day Saint singles thrive during their single years. So if you want to thrive while you're single, it just makes sense that you're going to need your health. And that means providing your body with proper nutrition. For some of us, that can be hard to do. We're so busy, and it's so very easy to check off the box next to our daily meals, as being done. And the quickest way to do that is to just select less nutritious options. And for so many of us, it shows. It affects other areas of our lives, not just our physical health. So, so much for thriving with that set up, right? We could turn that around, though, where we do it by identifying and then tackling the root cause of the problem. I think for many of us, the root cause of the problem is convenience. And I know I fall into that convenience trap quite a bit. We know that meals made at home tend to be more nutritious. We know that recipes for meals that taste great and provide the nutrient fuels our body need are available. Some of those recipes we feature here on Joy in the Journey Radio with our In the Kitchen segments. So all of it's there and available for us. We just don't want to do the work involved in any of that. We've got enough work to do as it is. We don't need any more, right? So it's far easier to just settle for less nutritious but more convenient fare. But what if we could make more nutritious options more convenient than less nutritious options? That's the question I asked myself because, as I said, I certainly qualify as a prisoner of the convenience trap. My thinking is that rather than fight the way that I'm biologically hardwired to perform, why not use an understanding of that hardwiring to develop a system that will more likely produce a better result? That's how I'm approaching meal prep. Now, I certainly didn't come up with this idea, but I think it does hold the key for healthier eating because it helps us escape the convenience trap by helping us make better choices. And we make those better choices more often because those better choices have been made the more convenient option. There's a story told that at Google, they don't prohibit people from drinking soda and other forms of sugar water. They just put them in the back behind the healthier purified water. Because the water is at the front, it is easier and more convenient to take it instead of having to, dig your way through to the back to take, whatever form of sugar water you want. I mean, for me, weakness, the particular form of sugar water I have a weakness for is Dr. Pepper. I remember one of my roommates in college, his was clearly Mountain Dew, without question, because he had what he called his towers of power. So he would actually save the cans of Mountain Dew that he consumed, and he would assemble them up. So it's like a one of the rooms in our apartment was like the dining room area. So inside this room is where he kept his towers of power, and essentially he'd basically stack these cans of Mountain Dew that he had. Um, he drank the Mountain Dew, and then he kept the can and added it to his tower of power. And they were like, several cans wide on each side, and then they were stacked all the way from the floor all the way to the ceiling. And he had, one of these towers of power in each corner of that room. I mean, the guy was like, that's his form of sugar water, Mountain Dew. I was always, I mean, no offense to Mountain Dew, I just wasn't into it as much as he was. My thing is like Dr. Pepper. That's always been my preference. But um, you know, even with that, I've kind of taken on sort of, Google's approach. I typically don't buy soda. So the only thing I have to drink in my place is milk and water. And I drink a lot of water. So by not having it there, it just makes making the better choice, the more convenient choice, right? And so I'm kind of doing the same thing that Google's doing. Um, and that's the approach I'm taking with meal prep, right? I want to I want to create a system where healthier and meal options are placed toward the front, right? So that you really have to do work to get the stuff that you shouldn't be taking in. Now, I've been working at this for a while now, and what I want to do in this episode of Join the Journey Radio is share with you some tips that I've learned for actually implementing meal prep, right? So I'm all about practicality here. Meal prep to me means making most or all the meals you eat for a week all at once, right? So there's like a 2-3 hour block in my calendar for the week, and I reserve that block for meal prep. And the idea is to consolidate the time that I spend preparing food into just one block like that, and thereby economize my time for the whole week. Okay, this is straight from the trenches of what I'm going to give you. So here we go with that. So let's start off with my first tip. I got 6 tips to share with you today. And so the first tip that I have to share with you is a pretty simple one. And it's kind of obvious when you think about it, but I'll just share with one person. Many of us who make our own meals, we make them one at a time and then consume them right after we make them. But for many meals, it's just as easy to make a double or a triple batch and then put the extra servings into individual sized containers and freeze them for later. I mean, why cook 3 times for 3 meals when you can cook 1 time for 3 meals? That's the whole point of meal prep. So we can spend the time that we would have spent preparing food on other things. And that's pretty much how I got set up into meal prep to begin with. For quite a while, I have been making food in batches, and then I'm going to eat one serving of what I make, and then the other servings in the batch that I didn't eat, I just put them into individual sized containers and then put them in the freezer, and then I can take them out and eat them as I need to. So it really economizes my time that way, and it makes it super easy to because I mean, think about it. It's like most of the convenience food is frozen anyway. So if you're going to eat frozen food, why not eat healthier frozen food, meals that you make yourself, so you know what goes in it, and you can actually make it so that it's healthy, nutritious, and good and delicious. It tastes great, right? So I mean, there's my first tip for you. Okay. My second tip is also pretty simple. So I use glass containers for everything because I actually think plastic leaks chemicals into the food that's stored in them. And this is especially true when you heat them in the microwave, right? Because essentially what you're getting is it's diffusion, reaction. So the chemicals are diffusing from the plastic into the food. And, you know, as with all diffusion reactions, the rate of diffusion will increase with concentration, but it also increases with temperature. So when you heat food in plastic containers, you're actually adding to the temperature, raising it up really quickly, and you're increasing that rate of diffusion from the chemicals from the plastic into the food. So I try not to heat anything in plastic. Um, and that's why part of the reason why I use glass containers, because I'm just going to um, put them into the freezer, and then actually um, I can actually heat them up in the glass containers. So I have here an example of some of the glass containers I use. So if I could just kind of get this around here, and so I got my little lunch pack here, and then you'll see that like the glass containers I use fit really nicely inside this little lunch pack here. So I'm just gonna open this up here, and this is real nice. So I have these round Pyrex, those things, and then I also have these square containers here. So here's what I'm looking at. So these containers I use for actual larger meals. So if I just kind of open this up, kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing with it, right? So I got this little glass container, and so what I do with it is I'll just fill like half of it with usually some type of meat with rice. So recently for meal prep, I made some fish, and so and I just put Old Bay seasoning on it because I mean here in Maryland, everyone uses Old Bay on everything, right? So, and it's really easy, right? You just spray, just put some aluminum foil down on a baking sheet, spray with olive oil, and then I put down the fish fillets. Um, I like washing them after I take them out of the package just to make sure that they're actually a little bit cleaner. And then I'm just going to put that there on the uh, put them there on the baking tray, and then spray again with olive oil, and then sprinkle on the Old Bay seasoning. So then that's like half, and then the other half I reserve for vegetables, right? And so then when I can just heat this right in the microwave, take it out, and it serves out really nice, right? And the same thing with these other containers, right? These containers, little glass containers, like I usually reserve these for meals that are like all in one. So I'm talking about stuff like casseroles, things like shepherd's pie, um, these types of dishes where you've you're not separating things out. It's just all kind of mixed together and just put it all in this nice little container. And the way I heat them up is I actually put them. Yes, I actually got. I do have it actually. So I got these little. These are just little paper bowls, right? And so I have three of them. So here's well, actually, there's four of them here. So I just usually take two, put them on the bottom, and then the meal that I'm eating is going here inside the mid container, and then I'll put this on top for a cover. So then I've got these little edges here that hang on. The paper doesn't heat up the way the glass does in the microwave. So I can heat this until it's done, right? And then I've got these nice little edges here on the paper bowls to carry the hot glass dish in out of the microwave as many times as I need to. 'Cause sometimes you heat it up partially and stir it up a little bit, and then put it back in to finish cooking. So I can actually take these, and it's a nice little convenient thing to carry, and because I've got this little thing on top, it prevents splatter in my microwave, so it keeps it clean. And then if I just get too much splatter on one of these things, it's just a paper bowl. I just toss it out and get a new one. Start over again with brand new paper bowls. So, I mean, this system works very, very well for me. And the tip that I had was to use masking tape. So I've noticed, I mean, when I started out, I was actually putting masking tape on the lid, right? But if you're going to put masking tape on the lid and then you're stacking these bowls up on top, you kind of have to dig around to see what's going on with, what meals do you have where? And what I found is that if you put a piece of masking tape along the side and then use a magic marker to write on the tape, right? So when I heat the meal up, I just take the tape off, and when it's sitting there in my freezer, I've got all these stacked, and I've got masking tape showing on the outside, so it's really easy to look and see, okay, what do I have? How many of that meal do I have? Where's it all at? And to assess what it is you have without having to dig around to figure out what you got. So that's something that I do, and it works extremely well for me. I recommend it. Okay, now whatever material you select for your container, if you want to use plastic containers, I mean, go ahead and go for it. I personally don't use it because when I made the switch to glass containers when I was recovering from my surgery, um, I felt a noticeable difference in my body when I was eating food from the glass containers as opposed to the plastic containers. I felt a noticeable difference in my body. So I'm sold on using the glass containers. But hey, if you want to use the plastic, I mean, that worked for you, go for it, right? Um, so so yeah. And I use the masking tape. Um, in addition to being very functional, it's very quick to implement. It's very easy to implement. It's also very cost effective. I mean, a magic marker and masking tape, a whole roll of masking tape is pretty cheap. And it'll take you a while to go through a whole roll if you reserve it for just this one purpose here. So yeah, that's my second tip is to use the masking tape. Tip number seemed like an obvious thing to do, but honestly, some people, and they're starting something new like this, they just want to jump in and just go full bore. And, for me, practically, I've found that it's easier for me to keep up with a habit of meal prep if I start small. So, if variety is the spice of life, if you're like me, you're going to like eating something different every day. Eating the same thing every day gets boring very quickly. Unless, of course, it's biscuits and gravy. Maybe that's just me, right? I remember when I was actually transitioning from being an undergraduate. I just graduated and I was transitioning into graduate school to do my master's degree. And that summer, there was a little snafu with the accounting department in the department. So I wasn't getting a paycheck, and times were getting tight. And it got to the point where I only had enough money to buy flour, and I spent a little money on some sausage for some seasoning, and I was eating biscuits and gravy every day. It was great. It was great. So um, yeah, but I mean, normally I want variety, and if you're anything like that, then you're gonna want variety too. So the first time you attempt to make all your meals for the week on just one day of the week, you might feel overwhelmed because you're thinking you got to make all these different meals. Um, so maybe just the thought of making your meals for a week in the same day is overwhelming you. And that's why I say start small, right? You're starting out with the meal prep, just try making just one meal that you eat 3 to 4 times during the week, right? And then you can um, prepare the rest of your meals as you otherwise would, right? And then, once you get with that, then move it up a notch, right? Make 2 meals, right? And then move it up to 3 meals. I mean, you'll find, I mean, once you get this thing going, that it's not as hard or overwhelming as you might think it is at first. But, if you do feel overwhelmed with it, just start small, right? And by starting in this way, you can begin to stagger the meals you make so that what you prep this week will take you a month or more to work through completely. Like, for example, many of the casseroles that I make, provide 6 servings. So with plenty of options for other meals in my freezer, I can eat one serving this week, and then I eat one or two the next week, and so on. It does take time. It takes time to build up to that. And how meal prep will actually work best for you is something you're not going to know until you actually start doing it. So, my tip is start small so you can better get your arms around it and work with it so that it works for you. Okay, so tip number 4, have a plan. So, if you try to think that you can just waltz into your kitchen and just do meal prep, you might be in for a surprise. There's actually a bit of planning required for meal prep to be truly time efficient. And that's the whole point, right? The whole point of having meal prep is so that you can economize the time you spend preparing meals, freeing that time up for other activities that you may need or want to do. And the way you get that done is by actually having a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, you're going to end up wasting time trying to figure out what to do, and you're going to end up not working with it as well as you could. So you need to go on this with a plan. The first thing you need to do to have a plan is to schedule an appointment in your calendar for meal prep. Ideally, this should be a recurring appointment on the same day every week that lasts 2 to 3 hours each week. So if you're just starting out with meal prep, I would plan on 2 hours. Okay, since you're going to be following tip number 3, which is start small. So you won't need 3 hours. You just take the 2 hours, right? And then as you work your way up, then you can expand that out to three. Second, you're going to need to plan what you need to eat for every meal for the upcoming week. This will help you to know what specific meals you need to make during your meal prep time. Our brains are designed to follow instructions. They're not designed to think. I know that doesn't sound right, but it is. So having a list of what you need to make actually saves you time because the list is like basically a set of instructions for you. It's like, okay, I need to make this meal, and I make this meal, and I need to make this meal. Without having that list, you're going to waste a fair amount of time wondering what you're going to make. So meal prep is supposed to save you time and not cost you more time. So you have a plan when you go in. Now, as you're planning, be aware of the limitations of your kitchen, right? So, for example, well, I used to have just one good casserole dish, and I recently bought a second one. Found this really great deal. Um, I got this really nice casserole dish. It cost me 20 bucks, and it was made in France. So I feel like I got scored that one. Um, but before that, I only had like one good casserole dish. So with only one dish to make a casserole in, I shouldn't plan on making a breakfast casserole and something like shepherd's pie during the same meal prep session because both of those meals require the same and only casserole dish that I have to make either meal, right? So in addition to scheduling your time, be sure to schedule the cooking equipment you're going to need as well. Because generally, you're going to use, one dish or one pan or one pot for one meal or part of one meal, and that's just going to get occupied. So, you want to be able to plan the resources out as well as the actual meals you're going to be making. So, that's tip number 4. Always have a plan. So, tip number 5, a really important tip that I didn't actually I didn't actually think about this going into it, but as I started to actually execute on meal prep, I've found that this is actually very, very valuable. So, and it may be that this is just a tip for single men. So if you ladies are kind of rolling your eyes with this one, you know, feel free to just ignore this. I'm not going to be offended or hurt at all. I've just noticed that sometimes, I see something in a grocery store and I think, hey, that would go really good to something I already have in my pantry. Or, hey, I could use this for making such and such meal. So I'll pick it up, but then it eventually spoils because I never got around to using it. This is especially true of fresh vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, celery, lettuce, as well as fresh fruit like bananas and lemons. Um, Planning my meals for each week, okay, like, previous tip, always have a plan. Planning my meals for each week doesn't always resolve that issue because um, what ends up happening is I'll have multiple items that need to be used up before they spoil, but not so many free slots on my meal schedule. So what I have found that works best for me is doing my shopping right before my meal prep session, right? So I'm going to have a plan in hand of what meals I'm going to be preparing for meal prep. And then from that plan, I can then compare what do I need to make these meals? What do I already have in my kitchen? And then, compare the two and then figure out, okay, what do I need to put on my grocery list? And then I have a grocery list in hand for the meals that, for stuff I don't already have in my kitchen or pantry. I'm going to go to the grocery store, obviously, and get the items on the list. But if I go to the grocery store on the same day that I do meal prep, but before I do meal prep, right, um, I'm going to bring those items home from the grocery store, and then I'm not going to put them somewhere where they just set and spoil. Instead, I'm going to use them right then and there to make the meals that I will then freeze. So I'm not wasting any food. Nothing spoils. There's no waste. And the best part about this is that it's actually easier for my shopping list to contain only the items that I absolutely need, and that saves me even more money. So I highly recommend, going to the grocery store just as close as you can to the time when you're actually doing meal prep. So, tip number six. This is my last tip for you for the meal prep. So, when I started to implement meal prep, I had these visions of preparing absolutely everything that I would eat in the coming week, and I learned in the school of hard knocks, or more like, because this is the hard of the knock, right? This is the hard part of the knock. My noggin, boom, boom, boom. That's how I learned most of what I learned, by the way. I learned through the school of hard knocks that starting, there is a whole lot of work, right? So, not only do you want to start small, um, but you don't have to do everything all at once, right? I learned it's not the best approach for me to try to do everything. And even after I've been doing meal prep for a while now, I don't prep every meal that I'm going to make, that I'm going to eat during the week. Um, I was thinking initially that I could squeeze out maximum efficiency in my time during the week by preparing every single meal. But not everything is amenable to freezing, right? So, for instance, I like including egg whites in my breakfast. I make omelets, I make scrambles, I make breakfast burritos, I make breakfast sandwiches. Um, but I use egg whites for these things. And the thing I like about egg whites is that they're fat free, cholesterol free, they're high in protein. In fact, they're nothing but protein. Um, but they also don't freeze very well. I mean, they do okay, but it's not great, right? They taste much better if you consume them fresh. Now, of course, egg whites by themselves don't have any flavor. They don't have much of any flavor. So I get really creative with seasonings. Seasonings make all the difference. And that's what so I'll put in usually a little bit of some type of breakfast meat, ham, uh, you know, uh, turkey sausage. Sometimes I use veggie sausage, um, turkey bacon, whatever. And I'll mix in some vegetables, depending on, which meat I'm using. So, um, if I'm using, say, like turkey bacon, for example, Sweet potatoes, mushrooms go really well with that. Um, you know, the sausage, on the other hand, turkey sausage, mushrooms go well with that as well. Um, not so much the sweet potato. Um, Broccoli is really good with ham. In fact, I make there's a breakfast casserole I make that's got ham and broccoli in it. Let me think of broccoli for breakfast, but I found that in order to really get as many servings a day of vegetables into your diet, you can't exclude breakfast. It's very, very difficult to get the amount of vegetables you need in your daily diet if you're not eating vegetables during breakfast. And so that's why I make omelets and scrambles and breakfast burritos and breakfast, because it's easier to incorporate vegetables into these items than if you're eating something like pancakes or French toast. Not that I love French toast and waffles and pancakes and all that stuff, but I don't really eat that often for breakfast anymore. That's really, come on, let's be honest. Those things are really dessert. Those things are really dessert. Can we just be honest about that? Um, but yeah, they do taste great. And so once in a while I'll do, but typically I don't. I'll focus on the egg whites. And egg whites, they do okay when you freeze them. They're not great, but they're okay. But they're much better consumed fresh. So I don't include breakfast in my weekly meal prep session. I just focus on the other meals for the day. And that's fine because that's the beauty of meal prep, right? It's very flexible. So you can do as little or as much as you want. You don't have to put everything in the freezer when you're done either. Typically, if I'm going to eat an individual portion within a day or two after meal prep, I ain't putting it in the refrigerator. I'm not putting it in the freezer. I'm going to put it in the refrigerator. Everything else goes in the freezer, right? Then each morning, I make and package my breakfast, package my other meals according to the plan I made earlier, and then I'm out the door. So it's about 15 minutes it takes me to make my breakfast French, and then another 5 to pack everything. So that's 20 minutes in the morning. So I'm actually making it fresh, and then usually, unless it's like a burrito, I'm putting it in something like this, and then um, or if it's a casserole, then it's already made during meal prep. I will actually make breakfast casserole during meal prep, right? So I'll just put it in a container like this, and then you just take it out and but if I'm making it fresh, it takes about 15 minutes, and then it just takes about 5 minutes to pack everything. So it's 20 minutes in the morning, and I'll just go this and take it wherever I'm going, and then I'll just eat it there and then be done with it, right? To me, that's the best part about meal prep. I love the time savings. Before I was doing meal prep, I would actually spend about 30 minutes um, preparing each meal that I consumed, and often longer because I usually didn't have a plan. So, about a third of those I would eat as leftovers later. So, when I sit down and do the math with the leftovers, I'm spending about 7 hours a week with cooking. So, now that I've moved to meal prep and I'm making most of the meals I make, in just a 2 or 3 hour time span, with 3 hours for meal prep, I'm saving 4 hours a week. That's half a standard workday that I'm saving every week. And I can apply that toward whatever I want, right? So to me, that's the best part about weekly meal prep is it really does save you time. So here again are the 6 tips that I have for meal prep. Tip number 1, it's just as easy, if not easier, to make a meal that feeds multiple people as it is for just one person. Okay, tip number 2, use masking tape and a marker to label your containers. Tip number 3, start small. Number 4, always have a plan. Tip number 5, try to do your shopping as close to meal prep time as you can. And tip number 6, you can prep as little or as much as you want. So you can use whatever tips will work for you. If some of these tips, are going to work for you, but others won't, just take what you can use and throw the rest away. It reminds me of a letter that I got from my grandfather when I was on my mission. My grandfather wasn't much of a writer. So the fact that I got a letter from him, and this came about halfway through my mission, I was really eager, when I got a letter from him because he doesn't really write that often. And it was a really short letter, as I remember, it's only about a couple pages. And I don't remember much of what he said, except I remember something he said at the very end. He said, I don't know if anything I've shared for you has been helpful to you, but if it has, keep it. Throw the rest away. And, that made an impression on me. And I've always taken that attitude with everything that I encounter. And, I'd recommend that for you. If something I've given you today has, going to be helpful for you, keep it. And if it's not going to be helpful for you, throw it out. Okay. No love lost on my end. I'm not judging. Uh, if you have other tips that work for you, that's great. But please, hey, go to the comments down below and share those tips with everyone so we can help more and more people, right? So that's pretty much all I got for you, peeps, for this episode of Join the Journey Radio. I hope it was helpful for you. Thanks to all of you for joining in. If you have something you'd like to say about what we've discussed today, please leave a comment down below. If you have a topic or question you'd like to see addressed, we're happy to help. Please, again, leave a comment down below. If there's something we can do to help you overcome the challenges of LDS singles life, then, yep, you got it. Leave a comment down below. There's also the contact page, jointhejourneyradio.com/contact. There you can find a form you can use to send us a message. That works as well. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our content that you find helpful so that the algorithms can, push our content out to more LDS singles and help them thrive in their single life. So again, that's all we got for you for this episode of Join the Journey Radio. Thank you, everyone, for participating and joining in. And, uh, until next time, this is your host reminding you there is joy to be had all along your journey. So take that joy and journey on.